a seat to the bar and join us for another episode of McAnally's Pubcast, a podcast exploring the fun and fantastical mind of Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files series. Hosts Tansenn, Jess, and Maggie bring you another round of literary analysis on this immense, immersive, and colorful environment inhabited by Harry Dresden, the world's only licensed private investigator and professional wizard. Join an active and engaged community of new and die-hard dedicated fans focused on the fabulous themes, theories, characters, context, lore, and more. This is McAnally's Dresden Files Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk. Welcome to the McAnally's Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. This is episode 9.5, The Swing Vote, where we are covering the novel Summer Night. My name is Tansenn, and I'm joined by Maggie.
Hello, hello.
And Jess.
Alpha. Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for your generous support. It's people like you who help us to do what we do. If you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, sign up today and get a fuck ton of bonus content, kick-ass merch, behind-the-scenes outtakes, and more. Sign up today at www.patreon.com/freeflowrambling.
Chapter 6. The Wizard Senior Council discusses the fate of Dresden. They decide to vote upon Dresden's mantle as a wizard, which will determine if they will yield to the vampire's demand. The Senior Council is split evenly, with the vote of one remaining council member, the Gatekeeper, who seems to have insight of Dresden's dealings with Mab. He opts to base his vote on Dresden's willingness to accept Mab's request.
So we wrapped up at the end of the last one with Le Fortier saying that the Reds are, in fact, willing to sue for peace or whatever. And, Ebenezer being like, oh, do they want to pay the blood from all of us? And they're like, or is that Dresden or whoever sends it? Anyways, they want justice. They want what any one of us would want. He looks at Dresden. They want you. Gulp. Me? La Fortier.
Hello, me.
Because basically a guy has got to be like a take that or a...
Yeah, it was quite the shocker. What?
But yeah, he's like real good at the comeback there. Duke Ortega is back, who we met just at the end of the last book, who's there just to witness all of Dresden's terrible crimes on behalf of Bianca and the Red Court, and who apparently pieced out pretty quick when things hit the fan, because apparently he was still around to report it all. So, yeah, they're like, well, this is all Dresden's fault. Just give us Dresden. Everything will be fine. We'll call off the rest of it. So, the cowardly side of the Wizards, where they're like, okay, let's just that's fair. Dresden is the one that, by his own report, caused all this. So, sure, let's just give him Dresden.
Right, and there's the hostile portion, which is like Le Fortier right there, who's just like, you're a criminal. Just outright states, just slams him. Yeah, basically, right. He's like, Dresden is considered a criminal by the Red Court, so they'll just extradite him to, and it's like, of course, everything by their count is that he's a criminal. Well, and I think even Dresden immediately says it here or whatever. He's like, or Ebenezer or something. But, they basically orchestrated the whole thing. Dresden didn't actually do any. Again, if you read his report, he did what any sane person would have done to try and save the regular human, mortal, innocence type. He was trying to save Lydia. He was trying to save just the random snacks that were there. He was trying to save Susan. And they basically set him up at every turn to... But yeah, Le Fortier and all of them are like, well, that doesn't matter. He still did it. And, we can just end this right now. All we got to do is check him out. We don't really like him anyway. So it's simple to them, right? So yeah. And the council seems pretty split on it. They're polarized.
Yeah. And as Dresden says, I think for good reason. So, obviously he's not real keen on this idea. He doesn't want to be the sacrificial goat here. But yeah, if the council at large is kind of divided on this, because as he says, it would set a dangerous precedent. If you just screw up and we're like, okay, you have no more governing body, no more sanctuary, no more protecting body, we'll just every time one of you does something, we'll just kick you out to the wolves to save our butts, then yeah, that's not what's the point of the council. It's to have this unifying place for wizards, for to have somebody to fight your enemies as a group and the whole whatever.
Yeah, there's no protection anymore.
There's no, it's like that's just every man for himself then, and that's just gonna set you back several 100,000 years, whatever, and so yeah, it's not. And I gotta say, I'm like, that would, let's just throw everything out the window and let's just solve our problems by kicking you out the door. I'm like, well, great. So, so it starts a huge debate on
Well, and there's this moment in here, too, when Ebenezer is like, fucking, we don't, ditch each other when the going gets tough or blah, blah, blah. And the Merlin is like, politics are not games for children. Dresden played and was beaten. Time for him to pay the price. And, on the one hand, I kind of get what he said. I fully agree there, because, Dresden spent the entire Grave Peril being like, we're not going to a vampire party. That's obviously a trap. And then he went to the vampire party, and it was obviously a trap. And then he got screwed, and it's like, yeah, well, you know what?
yeah. Well, and there is that too, right? Which is, I think, like you say, where the split comes down, because if it was just as simple as throwing him to the wolves, then nobody would be. But again, if you look at it through this different angle, this different lens, this other perception of what's going on, then they do seem very reasonable, and they're like, well, we have this one thing that caused all these problems, so let's just cut out the bad apple and save the rest of the bunch, and it's not. So luckily, Dresden, even though he didn't want to do his sucking up or whatever beforehand, he didn't have to, by kind of just being who he was and not wanting to be that person. He already sort of won over Listens to Wind and Martha Liberty and that. So, it starts coming down to a situation of, is he in the fold or not, basically, I guess.
Right.
Does he count for their protection?
Right. Ebenezer and Listens to Wind do come to Dresden's defense, and Listens to Wind reminds Leforti that peace can't be bought, so handing him over would just, there's no point. Which he gets confused, and Dresden uses some pretty heavy examples with the loss of Native American land and Hitler in Europe. Hello.
And that's another great moment. He's talking about the Native American tribes, you doll. And he's like, I figured Ebenezer would leave that out, but since everyone laughed, I guess not. Or I guess just the brown ribs were saying, And it was like, well, a translator has to take their job very seriously. You can't trust a translator if they're just randomly changing things around and not saying what you're saying. So on the one hand, really, Ebenezer had no choice, man.
But side note, but that whole Nelson Mandela speech from a few years back, or whatever, I think it was at his funeral, maybe, or just a thing to remember him.
Nelson Mandela made a speech at his funeral.
No, whoever was making a speech, whatever, like that, the translator they hired did not speak sign language, and so she was just doing random shit. And no one realized, because, obviously they don't do sign language, right? But all these people at home were like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Oh, I don't recall hearing about that, I don't think.
That's really funny.
Right.
Oh, my God.
I see it all the time, though, where it's police departments have to, apologize because they hire someone to do their, sign language, but, obviously none of them could actually speak it, so they're just like, yeah, sure, this seems right? And then they don't, and then the people call in when they see, a news conference, and they're like, what the fuck is happening?
On a slightly related note, it was subtitles. My friend did editing for a fishing show, and so he would insert snarky comments like host is smarter than he looks in the subtitles, because he figured nobody is actually watching a fishing show with subtitles on, is what his thought was.
It's funny.
Except all us hard of hearing people that can't hear the TVs do turn them on
all the time. Yeah.
Wait, what did he say? Oh, what?
See, I listen to subtitles. I read subtitles while I listen to programs, no matter what. If I'm on YouTube or if I'm on blah blah blah. Yeah. And YouTube ones are generally automated or whatever like that, but what they can hear. So there can be problems like that. But TV ones hire people to do it for, and you can always tell when they got lazy, and it's just
they can't keep up, or when it is
it's just versus... I don't know, it's the character says 15 words and the subtitles just says Sarah says it's time to go outside, and really Sarah was like, oh my god, we're gonna be late for the bus, we need to get out there now, and it's just Sarah says go outside, and I'm like,
see, some of that
Sarah said a lot more.
Some of that though I think is just because of course you can say it a lot faster than you can read it. I think it's just to keep up with the plot, that it was sometimes, because I have noticed that sometimes where
maybe, but I'm like, damn, I was like, if you were really hard of hearing, you're missing half the story.
It is, it just sort of gives you the gist on a lot of that, because I'm like, I just don't think they have the time to keep up or redo everything word for word. They'll be halfway halfway into the last scene and Sarah's still explaining why she has to go outside, It's like...
Right.
Stuff. But anyways, yes.
For all you deaf people listening to our podcast, you're missing out on a lot of the story.
A lot of the story. A whole lot. How's that? Transcription's coming along there, Jess.
Episode 1 will be done any day now, for sure.
So Martha Liberty is the next to come to Dresden's defense and recalls that Dresden's status within the council is as a fully ranked wizard, so that he should be protected thusly.
Yeah, because that becomes the next thing, right? Because Dresden's like, or whoever, they're like, well, I'm a part of the council. So they're like, well, are you really? Do you deserve to be part of a council? Because we could just make you not part of the council, and then that would easily solve this. Then we could totally in fact, we'd be obligated to hand you over because we can't be harboring any fugitives. And anybody that's gone against the Accords, we'd be obligated to hand you over, and that'll still solve our problem. Because that's the other thing, right? They're like, well, we can't protect anyone if we're dead, And it's like... I mean, that just kind of is them anyways, and I don't know if Butcher's specifically laying it on here thick, but I'm like, you really, especially from Lefortier and Merlin, you get this huge cover-your-ass vibe that they are just being, completely cowardly. They're like, we don't... And I mean, on the one hand, I get you don't want a war with the vampires, especially, these aren't the nice, sexy whites or anything. These are the, throat-ripping out, baddie, gross-looking reds here. They're monstrous monsters. They do bad things. None of it's cool. And it's like, yeah, I would see not wanting to have to throw yourselves. I don't think even as wizards and as powerful people and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you've got, that many more people on the council that aren't as... Because obviously the senior council, that's the point, is they're the oldest, they're the biggest, they're the most powerful wizards, But it's like, yeah, I get not wanting to throw down with these guys. It's just so, again, what is the point?
Slimy.
Yeah, slimy. Yeah, it really is. It's just very, very, very cowardly. And they're like, because again, right? Listens to Wind is like, yeah, we don't know that they're actually that this will actually end anything, right? With those examples, it was like, sure, everybody tried to buy peace. It doesn't always work. It still just got swallowed up and eaten and everything. You keep compromising.
So on the one hand, you get, all the time when, injustices go on in the world, everyone's like, how come this government isn't sending forces? How come that government isn't sending forces, right? And on the one hand, you gotta understand, end of the day, it's not gonna be, Justin Trudeau of Canada or Joe Biden of America or Boris Johnson. Are you still in charge by the time this episode comes out? The UK? Might not be, but, it's not people always look at really big high superpowers and they're like, are you gonna go and do this? But at the same time, Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, they're not going to war. They're sending their people to war. Yeah. Right? So it's a little bit of well, do they decide to send their entire country to war? They're whatever. Blah, blah, blah. But in this case, it actually would be the Merlin going to war. He actually would be there at the front lines because he's the biggest, baddest magic user, right? He would have to be there. You are the tank in this situation, right? So it's a little bit different on that whole, should I send a bunch of, young little wardens out? No, should I personally go to the front lines and, actually do some damage and, take out an entire castle or blah, blah, blah,
and
right?
there is that, too, as many as they are and as large as the council is, I mean, again, they've said a bunch of people are missing, but also... Dresden is this is the most I've ever seen in one place, but it's still kind of, one of the smaller theaters of this big convention center.
They're not country sizes of...
It's not a country-sized, right? And exactly, it's you can't make wizards the way you can make vampires and things like that. So yeah, exactly. It basically means everybody's gotta... they're all part of this, whether they like it or not. And like you say, the big guys don't get to just stay home behind their desks and order the troops around. They are going to have to take a much more active role, whatever that is, to participate and to help ward against, this big numbers and difference in numbers and that,
Which is another point about, it rained toads the day the council came, is that most of the time when we talk about the council, we kind of limit ourselves down to the senior council. Yeah. We rarely need to talk about anyone else. We've got a couple of wardens that we care about, but mostly we only ever talk about the senior council as these books progress further. But, when we're doing the whole, hot potato sort of thing right now, where we're jumping between, Merlin and Harry and Ebenezer and everyone else up on the senior council, you've got the entire room going, ooh and ah this entire time, right? The whole auditorium is
who the fuck is this kid?
Right? And even though the dice seemed a little bit stacked against Harry in this moment, a lot of the people are actually agreeing with him. If you were in this room right now, you've got the entire, Pokemon Stadium all going, oh, at the same,
exactly.
they're all playing a lot of Pokemon these days. We just brought it up, okay?
Right.
But
it's not just everyone's cheering for the gym leader. Everyone's like, holy shit, like, here's this, like, oh my god, there's this underling here, and we actually do agree with him. And, like, and even, like, as we meet Ramirez later on in the series, like, we know a lot of the younger guys are Team Harry.
Yeah.
They do think that, you know, like, he was backed into a corner, and, like, that's what we would have done, too. Whereas the older guys are like, you shouldn't have been backed in the corner in the first place, dummy. Like, you know, like...
Well, and his whole experience with Justin has put this sort of sour taste in these more senior wizards' mouths when it comes to Dresden. Like, even Lefortier, like, accuses him of selling out Petrovich because he was Justin's apprentice.
As we learn, Petrovich trained Justin trained Harry. How did the vampires know Petrovich's fortress? Right, and this is, so in and of that, right, he's a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, he was already considered kind of a traitor by these big guys.
He's already... And, you know, again, from our perspective, from Harry's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I had no idea. He's like, Justin told me dick all. Justin didn't even tell me there was other wizards.
Yeah, he didn't even know like a council.
Right. So, of course, to him, this is absolutely ridiculous. But again, from Lefortier's perspective, right, you don't know. How do you know that you weren't a willing participant in all of until you got caught and then you had to, oh no, I'm so sorry. You know, like, it was self-defense, right? Like, this is the thing, you know, it's like...
Yeah, Lefortier really tries to spin it against him, where he's like, what the hell are you talking about? He would even uses Dresden's reaction against him, like, see what look what an asshole you are.
Because Dresden just laughs. Dresden's like, are you fucking kidding me? And he just laughs. He's like, see, this is what contempt he holds us in, and it's like, dude, seriously.
Well, and I don't want to jump too far ahead in the story. We're gonna get there in the next couple of episodes. But at one point, Harry just needs to go decompress, and he goes to Murphy, and he just kind of does this whole, like, you know, for our sakes, we get a lot of explanation, but for Harry's sake, he's just venting and, like, you know, like, right? And one of the things he mentions is, like, he'd actually been adopted with another girl, Elaine, and that Elaine and Justin turned on him and tried to kill him that night, right? And it's like, it was this whole thing, and she was, like, my first love, and it was all, like, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, like, Justin didn't even tell the council that he'd adopted Harry or Elaine, right? Like, they didn't even know until he killed Justin that he even existed or whatever like that, right? And so it's, like, you know, like, the amount of distrust that went on between the council, even before Harry ever even got here, you know, like, for whatever reasons Justin had in the first place, he clearly had his own reasons not to tell people shit, right? So it's like, you know, you get this indication that, like, you know, the council isn't exactly, you know, like, we all meet up for circle time and, like, share our problems, and it's weird that you don't, right? Like, clearly shit wasn't so copacetic anyways before you got here, like.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, too, right, is that, you know, and I think a lot of what Harry's problem is, and rightly so, is that, again, like, he was 16 and stuff like that, and it's like, you all didn't know that he'd even taken this, right? So it's like, he didn't tell us about this, so he could obviously make us his, you know, little independent Stockholm Syndrome
Wizard Army
thing, exactly, you know what I mean? But it's like, yeah, you have to assume you're like, did Dresden really decide at 16 years old that he was gonna, or, you know, whatever, like, I'm sure you could have traced somewhere back, because obviously Justin must have had to legally adopt them somehow. They were in orphanages. He didn't just steal them away in the middle of the night, you know? I'm like, would you not look back at this and be like, one of our guys adopted these two kids, like, 6 years ago, never told us about them, never told them about us, apparently, like, would that not shine a little more light on Justin, you know? Like at 10 was Harry and Elaine scheming to be... You just wait, we're gonna kill this guy in 6 years, Elaine, come on.
The point is that, like, they very quickly, like the vampires, try to throw Harry under the bus, quite frankly.
The vampires throw Harry under the bus?
Vampires want to throw him under the bus, but the White Council also wants to throw him under the bus. They're a little bit like the vampires in that way, which just comes with power. I mean, you're going to get that from any sort of politician at any level, supernatural or not.
It really is the most convenient way to deal with it on all sides. It's like, just get rid of Harry.
Yeah.
Done.
Which, I like Harry a lot, but I can see from their point of view, it is really easy, just convenient. Like, you're one guy, who the fuck cares?
This little annoying shit, let's just get rid of him.
Go to war with the red vampires, or sacrifice you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, you weren't doing much for us to begin with, quite frankly.
Yeah, and so that's the thing,
You're not the next Wizard Einstein.
So yeah, half of them that don't really know what's going on are like, well, if I can avoid this whole war with just this guy, okay. And then the other half were like, well, you don't know, it could be you next time.
Yeah, right.
Right, and then, yeah, exactly, there's the whole, other side, like, Ebenezer and Lefortier, where it's like, you don't, or listen to it, really, you don't know for sure that's going to work. They're telling you that now, but you know what? They're the bad guys. So handing him over and letting them eat him or whatever is still not necessarily, is still not a guarantee that they will hold up their end and leave everything be at that point. They could still decide, nah, he still started a war. We're going to finish it.
Right.
So
Dresden tries to stand up to himself, and that's where you said before, where it comes up, like, do we set this precedence like this?
yeah.
Because he didn't violate any of the laws of magic. So
Yes.
Oh, that's
what
another
he's
thing, though, is
claiming.
that we know for a fact that the White Council had a huge hand in eradicating the Black Court, because they're the ones who had Bram Stoker go and write this book.
Publish the
and
book.
then they, like, made it, like, an international bestseller. They're like, everybody figure out how to kill a black vampire, and we're good. So it's a little bit funny that now they're like, whoa, we can't just go kill off all the red vampires, okay? Like, we did that once. It was a lot of hard work. We had to write a book, and then we had to get people to read a book. You know how hard it is to get people to read in the 21st century? Like, we're not going to war.
hard. Like, we're working on a deal with Audible, but it's not there yet.
It's not there
yet. You know, but...
So, like, you know, like, it is a little bit, it's like, it's not, like, the most impossible thing in the world. They've done it before, you know?
I know, and that's the thing, like... That's weird about history and fictional or non-fictional and stuff like that. It's like, exactly, it's like, well, yeah, back in the day, you just, like, put together a horde and go take them out or whatever, you know, a lynch mob or something.
Yeah!
And exactly,
Torches.
you know, torches and pitchforks. And that was, I'm like, apparently these peasants in France could go take out
Come
all
on,
these
guys, let's
werewolves.
do the Crusades one more
But
time.
now, yeah, but it's like, but now that you are so much more global and whatever, now it's like, oh, it's so much work to get, like, you know, like, sure.
all this red tape.
You know, now it's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe again, it's all that global media or something like that. It's just so much more in your face. You can't just like, yeah, I'm like, on the one hand, it should be easier, but on the other hand, apparently it's so much harder.
On the one hand, I get it. On the other hand, this is like 2002, 2003. We don't have smartphones yet. You're still good for like another 3 years. Like, do whatever you want, wizards.
There will be nobody whipping out their phone to record.
Yeah, I'm like,
this.
you don't know it yet, but you've only got a couple more years to go crazy.
Come on, Merlin, jump on it now. Now is your opportunity.
Like, changes happens in roughly 2011, I think it is. And so, clearly we got smartphones in 2011. So it's like, you guys are like, you really dragged this shit out. Like, you could have finished them all in a year just by being crazy, but now you're,
Yeah.
now we've got social media, and you can't just go around killing random guys on the street.
Although maybe it is slightly a numbers game, too. That, you know, a few thousand years ago, there were a lot less wizards, but there were a lot less vampires. And like you say, you can propagate the vampires a lot faster than you can propagate the wizards. So maybe that's why.
Maybe the red court's just much harder to destroy than the black court was.
That too, maybe they were just more on par, that it was a little bit easier to take out, whereas now, if everything's gone exponentially...
They're like, seriously, all it takes is garlic? Let's fucking do this.
Pizza for everyone!
Lefortier motions to vote if Dresden's status as a wizard in the council is valid.
Yeah, so that's basically what they decided it comes down to, is if he's actually gonna legally still get to be part of the council or not.
Yeah. Where he says, I remind the council that his appointment to his stole was a de facto decision based on circumstantial evidence. He's never stood trial, never been judged worthy by his peers. So I kind of wondered if this is like, was because Dresden's first trial for killing Dustin, was he elevated to the level of wizard for the White Council to judge his actions? Is it kind of like being a juvenile tried as an adult?
I'm thinking that must be part of what it is. Is that exactly, like, on the one hand, yeah, specifically for that, totally. But on the other, because again, this is the first time this is sort of laid out for us this way. So it must have been like, basically, it was like, I'm guessing it must have been like, you know, when they decided that, okay, fine, we'll give it to him in self-defense, then they're like, well, dude's got to be a wizard because there's no way he could have done it otherwise. Like, Justin obviously was. I mean, I don't do we know you're the timeline queen, Jess? Was Justin in his first regular normal timeline, was he just a 40, 50-year-old man, or was he like 150?
Hundreds.
Okay, so Justin obviously had been around well long enough to hone, and he was. I mean, we've already stated before now, I think we've been given the impression that he knew his shit, you know, so there's sort of no question that way. So yeah, so I think in order for Harry to have had any realistic hope, they're like, well, obviously he must have enough power and be able to do something with it, right? So I guess that's sort of where they're coming, that they basically just were like, well, if we're going to find you guilty, that means you have to be a, you know, because somebody that doesn't have enough power or know how...
For the record, like, Morgan is like 150 right now.
Yeah, I knew Morgan was, but I didn't remember offhand where Justin came into the... Or yeah, did they train together or something?
No, but...
No, okay. But yes. So yeah, so I know it was a little slightly surprising for me, and especially just to the way he says, like, you never had it. I'm like, so apparently, I guess he didn't have to go through, like, I guess he sort of audited the wizard course, I guess, is that what we get out of this? Because apparently from this, he's like, well, everybody else obviously must have to do testing. And again, he sort of alludes to this in a few chapters when he's talking to somebody else or whatever, right? That I guess you have to sort of prove your powers and display and whatever to the council for them to judge and rank and accept whatever.
Wouldn't he have done that with Ebenezer after? Because Ebenezer took over his training.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is I guess they just...
it was one of those things almost like where like you can just challenge the test rather than actually take...
He audited the
Yeah, because like clearly like for you to have killed Justin in this way, you clearly have got the shit. Like
I guess we don't need to go back and teach you how to do like a light a match spell.
Yeah.
It's like you just burn him and his entire house to the ground. I think he got that one covered.
Yeah.
Moving on, right? So I guess that's what, because I was like, what do you mean he went through no trial? His whole experience was a trial. But apparently it was not a trial of his
trial
peers.
by fire versus...
right? Of his actual abilities and skill level, I guess, is what they bypassed, right? So, yeah.
That fancy private school education of a wizard.
I guess.
They really try to kill you.
Yeah, right.
So I guess the stole's kind of, at first I was a little confused by the word stole.
Oh, yes. Like a first stole.
You two are completely useless to me because you don't read anything good in the world, but people out there who have read the Leanansidhe series, specifically the secondary series that came out, all the wrong questions, please, if any of you have heard about it, come onto the Discord and talk to me about it, because, like, the way it explains it all there, Leanansidhe, you guys know it, right? Like, Leanansidhe isn't, like, a real author, but he's a character.
Events. Yes.
He's the character, author, investigator who writes the series of unfortunate events. All the wrong questions is like his like personal journal about his own childhood and stuff like that. And in that world, VFD, Volunteer Firefighter Department, is this whole secret organization. In order to get to the organization, you're basically kidnapped as a child and brought there and you're raised to be like the perfect detective, and then you go on to become part of this secret Volunteer Firefighter Department, blah, 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 blah. It's very much in the way, like, they're raised to be, like, you know, like, totally, like, you know, like Leanansidhe says in one of the books or something that, like, one of the biggest tests is, like a teacher goes and locks himself in a cabin, and they leave clues, like, leading up to it the whole time, and then the students have to, like, race to find him in the cabin or whatever like that. Leanansidhe broke into his office, found the location coordinates of the cabin, told all of his classmates, and the entire classmate was already at the cabin when the teacher showed up. Well before any of the clues or anything had been released or anything like that, and they were, like, begrudgingly had to give it to him because that's part of the test or whatever like that, right? It's just one of those things where it's like they're legitimately, like, throughout his entire childhood, they were, like, legitimately throwing them off of cliffs and, like, throwing them in the middle of the woods and, like, trying to actively kill them, because that's how you become the best detective in the world, is to have been literally fighting for it the whole time. So it's like Harry, it's like they literally were like, okay, we're throwing you off this cliff. We kidnapped you as a child, and now we figured it out.
It's like, great. Like, Justin already did all that, so I guess.
Yeah, at that point, they're like, oh.
It's like, we don't need to do any, you know, sterilized, safe, try to kill you test. It's like that was just in your life growing up to this point. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly.
That's like how Harry Potter got to be an honorary Auror, even though he didn't ever go attend his last year of school, because they're like, okay, you killed Voldemort, I guess you can be an Auror.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Fine, we won't make you do the OWLs.
Pretty much the same thing, exactly, right? No.
Oh, no one told me I had to kill Wizard Hitler just to skip my fucking exams.
Right? Exactly.
I mean, there was an easy way to do it.
Break a dragon out of Gringotts.
I studied all night. So anyways, yes, I guess that's basically they just fast-tracked him. But again, here, the Lafortiers and the Merlins and stuff like that are like... Because he's like, was my duel to the death not proof enough? And he's like, well, technically, like, he died, but how do we know you didn't just burn him in his bed, right?
Actually,
so like,
those credits aren't transferable to, like, Wizard Council,
exactly, so...
You're good enough for an American wizard, but for us High Council elites over in Europe...
Exactly. So, this is where that debate is still raging on, and where, you know, I guess explains to us more, even though we've heard Harry grumble about it for the last 3 books. Now we're seeing more from the Council and its side of where it sits on things, and where half of them are like, yeah, okay, you are, but we don't really accept that you are. It was all kind of weird.
But more to that point, that it's as much as that's an argument from the senior council.
It was non-traditional graduation.
Yeah. But just more to the point, though, is that you've got a whole room of wizards that are not quite as rigid in that belief. Like, it's hard to imagine because none of them have any speaking parts, but you've got an entire room that is very much like the ooh and ah on both sides.
Yes.
This isn't just Harry versus the senior council. You've got an entire room of wizards right now that have been like, hey, we're on Harry's side. No, we're not. Like,
and that's the thing, right? And he does mention, a bunch of these younger apprentices and stuff like that are there. And there's another interesting comment here when they get going where Ebenezer is like, you expect the youngest wizard to, right? And you're like, oh, so basically nobody else. I mean, again, it's only been a few years. Well, it's been a decade or so for Harry from 16 to now, because he's, we've had a couple of years since the start of the books, right? So
or roughly 25, 26 right now, yeah.
It's been like a decade since Justin and his ascension to the council or whatever.
Doom of Damocles.
So it just means that apparently there haven't been a whole lot of people in the intervening, which is, to me, a decade is a fair chunk of time. But I mean, okay, it's not super long, but it's a little bit surprising. Like, is this just speak to their level of standard that nobody else has yet been admitted? Does this speak to the scarcity of, the wizarding bloodline, that they're not just, popping up every year with a bunch of new people coming in, but I just found that a little bit interesting. I mean, unless he's speaking in a very, very general sense.
I don't think that he meant Harry was, like, legitimately the youngest. I think he more meant one of the youngest, of people who are relevant. He is the youngest,
yeah.
But
and it questions his legitimacy because of that, because throwing the age thing in.
Yeah.
On top of that, true. But on top of that, if you've got 500 years to reproduce, you don't need to be having kids in your 30s, like,
this is also true, but so okay. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, so this is where they basically say they're like, okay, let's vote if he's really a wizard. And that is where, and they just jump right to it. Like, Merlin and Laforte are like, okay,
let's figure this out right now.
A's for this, nays for that, let's go. And Ebenezer, whoa, hang on. And I love he's like, as a member of the senior council for all of 10 minutes, I would but he's like, I would like to invoke my right as a member of the senior council. And I think this is, again, like where Harry takes a breath and is like, or yeah, because Harry says to me about doing the whole proper try. He's like, it's not possible, or at least impractical, right? Because he's like, it's going to take forever to verify all of the events that went down in Grave Peril and sort this out, right? And they're like, yeah, we don't have time for that. We're just going to vote you out. And then same thing, Ebenezer's like, whoa, not fair. Like, most of these people don't know, like, everybody's just, and I totally get that. I mean, it's kind of like a world politics thing, you know what I mean? It's like, shit's happening, what do you guys all think? It's like, well, obviously I think this is terrible, but maybe there's so much more of it that I don't understand. That, like you say, I'm like, well, obviously every other country in the world should jump in and do what's right and stand up for, and you're like, yeah, but then there's this, and then there's that, and if they do this, then someone can do that, and exactly, it's like, do I suddenly want them bombing, like, Sidhe, I'm like, not really. Like,
but I also don't want to sign up for the draft, so
I don't, like, exactly. It's like, I want to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right, our country should do something, but again, I'm like, I don't want to be the one that invites it onto my doorstep for everybody else, right? So, this is the thing, right? But,
well, this is the thing here. Like, Ebenezer says, Merlin's got 3 plans to take you down.
Yes.
I'm gonna help you with the first. I can kind of help you with the second one. The third one's gonna be all you.
Yeah.
Here we are. Here's voting time. This is number 1.
Yeah, and this is the thing exactly, right? And Harry's like, oh, shit, I get it. Because
he's
like,
his first play.
I probably would have been dead. Like, if this had gone to a whole, because you're right, and he says it very succinctly or whatever. He's like, he's like, I want to make it just the senior council alone. And Merlin's like, on what grounds? He's like, on the grounds that there exists a great deal of information about this matter of which the council at large is unaware. It would be impractical to attempt to explain it all. And thankfully, because he's got Injun Joe and Martha Liberty there, they're like, okay, yeah. And I'm like, really, it does make, like, it's still, at first glance, Harry doesn't have a lot to work with here, but exactly, it's like a bunch of scared, whatever, it could very easily have gone. Even the ones that were sort of rooting for Harry and on Harry's side, they don't want to set this precedence, they still might have, again, you're pressured to go with the group, majority rules or whatever, right? Like, so, yeah.
So I have a bit of a random side note. So I have noticed, for the most part, you guys avoid calling him Injun Joe, even though up to this point in the books, he's basically mostly referenced as Injun Joe. And I was curious about the reason why you guys keep on
honestly,
listens
because
to
I
wins.
feel like you did it. I feel like you always refer to him as listens to win? So and I'm like,
I didn't. I stopped doing it because you guys were.
That is so funny. Is this one of those like projection mirrors? Like, okay, like the thing where it's like the two miners come out of the from work at the end of the day, and one of them's like pretty scruffy and dirty, and one of them's generally clean. And they're like, hey, see you later, see you tomorrow, have a good night. And the clean one goes over to the pump and like washes himself off, and the dirty one just goes straight home. It's like, do you know why this is?
No.
So the clean one is looking at the dirty one and thinking like, oh, we've both been down in the mines all day. I probably look pretty dirty. I should go and clean up before I go home. And the dirty one is looking at the clean guy and goes like, oh, he looks pretty clean. I mustn't be that bad. I've been down in the mines with him all day. I'm good to just go home. I'm like, I think, because I swear, I remember, because I was going to refer him out a few times, and I'm like, oh, I swear, Tansenn, I've never heard. Because I was going to say, for anyone that don't know, Tansenn actually does have the closest Native American to all. I mean, apparently
I'm Métis.
I do way, way back as well, but mine is far more removed than yours. Your mother was directly. So, you know, exactly. So I keep telling you, so I'm like, are we doing the whole, like, super sensitive thing, like, where we don't want to, you know, because I'm like,
I do, because I don't want to.
Yeah, because
I do just listens to wins, because I'm like, I just keep it simple and easier for me.
I don't, but at the same time, right, I'm like, I do feel, and we discussed it a little bit, I think, when he was introduced, that they poke fun at it, right? Because he's like, oh, the crazy redneck hillbilly doesn't, you know, knows that he has to call me, like, Native American Joe now, right? And I'm like, yeah, again, I get that that's just sort of the joke in calling him, but yeah, I was like, I've never, like, taken a, because again, to me, that was sort of giving the permission that they laughed it off, that, like, Injun Joe's okay with it, so.
We've said before, though, that both Mum and mine introduction was much more through the audiobooks, because Mum used to just play it around the house or whatever like that. Like,
yeah, Jess had
on
no
cleaning
choice.
days or whatever like that, like, we always played audiobooks, right? So for me, growing up, before I ever actually read it, I thought he was Engine Joe, and I didn't get it. I just didn't understand what the reference was.
I love that, Engine Joe.
I just thought it was Engine Joe, and I couldn't figure out. I was like, why do they call him that? I don't get it at all. Blah, blah,
They have
blah.
never, I mean, the only car they've mentioned is McCoy's, like, ancient Ford.
It didn't make sense to me, and it was like I probably was like several books deep, like not even like when we meet him now. It took a while for me to be like, I get it. Oh, wait. So it's just easier for me to listen to Wind anyways, because I'm just like, I don't know. Like, listen to Wind is a lot easier to hear.
I was curious.
There's a lot less to confuse it with that way. I'm like, yeah, I can tell what those, that's funny. Yeah, so that was honestly why I felt like it was a thing where, like, you
also
guys
more
were
PC,
avoiding.
I'm safe, I'm good.
Well, and I kind of sometimes use the word Indian like a reclaiming, kind of like, you know, the queer.
Yeah.
Like is sort of a
You're allowed
reclaiming
to say
it. It's like,
yeah.
like,
But part of
am I not
reclaiming-
being sensitive enough? And
Part of reclaiming is only that you can use it. I still can't use it.
Yeah.
Like, reclaiming isn't so that everybody can use it again. It's only so that you can use it. Like, for example, like, my coworker is Indigenous, and she specifically said she prefers the term Indigenous and only the term Indigenous, right?
As opposed to Native American?
As opposed to Native American. When I was in America, a guy there was like, oh, you're from Canada? I love Canada because they refer to us as Native Americans, and I think that's so much more respectful than here in America where they just call us Indigenous. And I'm like, what do you want? But obviously, everyone has their own thing. Right. Some gay people like queer and some still don't, right? It's just like, you know, like it's different generational, it's a different culture. Like, your people, whether or not you're part of the LGBTQ, might still like, but your friends like it and your other friends don't like, you know, like it's just things like that. It's
just
like,
personalized.
for me, it's personally,
bit like-
if I call him listens to wins, I'm good, I'm done, that's his name, leave me alone. I just, like, I want to be as PC as possible, call you by your name, I'm good.
I guess. Yeah. So
Cool. All right.
that is funny. I don't know. I was gonna say it's kind of like with your family, where it's like you can like badmouth your family, but if somebody else badmouths your family, you're like, oh no, you didn't. You know, it's like, that's my sister. I can complain about her because she's my sister and she did that to me. But you better not say anything bad about my sister. It's like, these are my words or my heritage or my thing, but you all can't.
Yeah.
Like, eh. So, anyways,
So back to the voting portion, and thank you for your input on that.
yeah,
I appreciate it.
that was kind of
that was funny.
that way it was. It was like, well, I did it because you're doing it. Well, I only did it because you're doing it. I was like, well, I don't know.
So the Merlin immediately votes against Dresden keeping his stole. And so
Weird.
bear with me on this, because I used to be in a sorority, and I keep thinking of how they sort of conduct this meeting. Sounds like Robert's Rules to me. It's just a methodology for holding meetings. And as like the president, the person presiding over the meeting, as a general rule, like if it's a small group, the president can have their own opinion and have their own vote. But if it's a large function, like say 100 people or more, the president is really held accountable and not supposed to have an opinion that sways the vote, or not supposed to actually express a vote unless it's absolutely necessary.
So the tiebreaker or whatever. So the fact that he goes first.
The fact that he just starts right off the bat and like,
well, if
and
the
he says
Merlin thinks so,
clearly
I should totally
influences everybody.
Total influence.
Like, what a giant jackass fucker.
I've never heard of Robert's Rules before, but I like that.
Yes.
It's a little bit like in America, like the vice president only votes if there's a tie to be broken.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they don't get to be in charge, or they don't get to be part of the vote.
I was gonna say I hadn't thought of it in quite those. Like I've heard of Robert's Rules mentioned before. Like when you brought it up, I was like, oh yeah, but I don't know it well enough, and that never was sort of my line of thinking with this. But I mean, I know
it's a huge abuse of power.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
But I was like, there has always been a bit in the back of my mind where it was like, yeah, like shouldn't whatever the other people go, like, don't you normally wait? Like,
Don't you think other people are about to have a debate that you should listen to before you vote?
Yeah, well, that too.
Let's just vote. He's an
whatever,
asshole. He's got to go. Well,
But exactly, just that whether that's exactly where it comes from or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is sort of the etiquette normally is that, like you say, that person waits until whatever's had their
I've never heard of Robert's Rules. I like that a lot.
Well, you should look them up. Maybe there's a lot you'll I'm sure you can come back
No,
next week.
one
and be
thing
like,
is good
this
enough.
Part, this part is good. The rest of it is all garbage.
One fact about someone is good enough.
That's perfect.
so Lafortier immediately supports Merlin's vote. And
Yes, because he's just kind of a douchebag, and also you get that he's a little bit of a tag-along, which is kind of what we're saying, why the Merlin doesn't get to have the
brown-noser.
first vote, because you Skeletor kind of douchebag, you. I forgot that's how they describe. That's how they describe, because he's the skinny, bald, bulgy-eyed, like he's basically a walking skeleton, Lafortier.
Oh, interesting. That's not what I picked up.
Go back and read his description. I know, I forget that a lot when I do, but then it's like when I stop and think about it, I'm like,
Just
yeah,
imagine
you're
some guy,
pretty
some extra in the back of a TV show. He doesn't matter.
I kind
what
of
he
sometimes
looks like.
check out when it comes to when the characters are described. Like, I don't really
same.
care if he's got blue eyes and
Yeah, same.
That's
Freckles,
true. We
like-
all kind of, until they
I've
start
got my own
coming
picture.
back.
I don't give a fuck what you look like.
I have a hard enough time keeping track of the names, let alone what they look like. Come on.
That's like fucking like ooh, what's his name? Ooh, that greasy
See,
little
names are hard to figure out.
greasy little weasel from Harry Potter. I want to call him Mudblood, but that's not his name.
Malfoy?
No,
Jacob, which?
no, Mundungus.
Oh, Mundungus.
Mundungus. I had the clearest picture of Mundungus in my head. Like every time I read the books, I knew this guy so much,
Yeah.
and he wasn't cast in the movies until the very last one. I think.
Yeah.
So for a long time, it was literally I only had my memories picture to do him. As soon as the movie came out, I've never been able to picture it again. I've only ever had the actor now, and I'm like, fuck! I know I had something, but ever since I've seen Part 1, Harry Potter, Deathly
not
Hallows,
the same one.
it was fully different. Like they cast him as like this bald, short, blah blah blah. And in my head, it was like,
Chubby,
wait,
yeah.
I don't know,
Was he like a little
I don't know
weaselly?
I don't remember what I pictured anymore. I don't remember. I've only got what they've had on the movies now.
He looked like, frickin' now I forgot his, the photographer from Stormfront.
Yes,
You had him more as a little ferret-faced, weaselly rat guy like that.
that's what I said. Weasel face.
Yeah.
Mudblood.
Okay.
Mundungus.
Mundungus. Okay, Lafortier was an emaciated man of medium height and build. His cheekbones stood out grotesquely from his sunken face, and his bulging eyes looked a couple of sizes too large.
Gross.
He had no hair at all, not even eyebrows, and on the whole, it gave him a skeletal look. When he spoke, his voice came out in a resonant basso, deep and warm and smooth.
Why does he look like
So he's
that?
the Slender Man.
He's like, yeah,
Skeletor? Yeah, like it sounds like necromancy project. Like someone raised him.
like, right.
Sorry if you look like that in real life. So the Merlin voted, and that
yes, I was
is a
gonna
big
say-
piece of shit move going first.
Yeah.
That's totally
And Lafortier barely lets him get, the breath finished. He's like, me too, me too, me too. I totally vote that way. I do same reasons. Yeah, exactly.
Fortunately, Ebenezer votes to keep Dresden Stole, and so does Injun Joe and Martha Liberty.
Yes. And she has a good point. She's like, this is not a solution. It's merely an action. She's like, we need to find something more than just this immediate reactivity to the situation or whatever, right?
Also, I like when at the end of this, Harry says, Harry 3, bad guys too. Like, you literally fight legitimate bad guys every day. This morning, someone's tried to shoot at you, and you're like, Merlin Lafortier, bad guys.
Yeah, right?
Yes, they are against you right now, but and again, the stakes are throwing you to the wolves, so that is pretty bad. But still, it seems a little over dramatic.
You have
Like,
to stop mixing your metaphors. The stakes are throwing you to the wolves.
Is that a metaphor? Mixed metaphors? I make them better.
It's not even always metaphors that she's mixing. It's just like
sayings.
random phrases.
I just say stuff and everyone goes with it and it becomes one, okay?
This is what's wrong with language today, you kids in your... You just throw anything out there and it becomes all words. But really, that's any language ever.
Yes, true.
So
As long as I get a
Shakespeare made
viral
up all kinds
TikTok
of
moment,
shit.
it's gonna be...
care.
It's in the books.
Oh, see, will that make your day? You have yet to get Jim Butcher to like one of your tweets.
Darn.
You're not up there yet.
I don't think you've ever
no.
tagged him.
No, I'm trying not to annoy him.
So, but the other ones you apparently annoyed liked your posts. So.
Okay, that's on my personal Twitter account, not our...
Oh, I'm not saying the McAnally's one.
McAnally's one.
I was talking about yours.
on my personal, sure. I'll try to get Jim Butcher, but he doesn't use social media. All the other ones do.
Okay.
For anyone out there, the entire cast of Critical Role and all of their guests have all liked at least one of my posts at some point, some of them multiple times.
Nice.
If you've been on Critical Role, you've liked one of my tweets. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I've got oh my gosh, I was freaking out the other day at work. Abria Iyengar liked 3 of my tweets in a row, and I was like, oh my god, I love you so much.
We're gonna be best friends now.
Literally, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, so Ebenezer basically, he's like, well, I lived with this young man, he's a wizard. And Injun Joe is like, yeah, well, my raccoon likes him, I get a sense of his character. This guy's good. And Martha Liberty's actually like, okay, well, also, this isn't really like a proper solution. Like, yeah, okay, he's okay, but on the whole, with the actual issues, also not cool. So yeah, so he's kind of getting his whole scope there, right? And then, yes, Ancient Mai.
She ties it up by voting against him.
Yeah, and she has slightly different reasons, right? She blatantly misusing his status. So she doesn't like that he's out in the open and stuff like that. She thinks he flaunts around and abuses his power or doesn't do what he should. He doesn't act like a prim and proper wizard or whatever. So she's just like, I just don't like his methods. He's not traditional. So that's part of hers.
Right.
Okay, old man, get out the way. I was gonna say, you'll die one day, but they live so long, that really sucks.
He's got it,
It's a big problem with the Wizard Council.
I mean, these guys are gonna die sooner than, at least Harry's way down here, and then, Ancient Mai is presumably ancient. So, in the
It's
grand
really funny,
scheme
they
of
just started
things-
calling her that when she was 80, though. And it's we're gonna call you this for 400 more years.
Oh, damn.
We learn later on that Ancient Mai actually, she spends most of her time with, her, next generation children. Her entire family for, 400 years has been taking care of her, living with her, because,
Are you sure? I don't
Yes.
remember that being Ancient Mai.
I thought it was Ancient Mai. I could be
Martha
wrong.
Liberty is
Oh,
still...
is it Martha Liberty?
Martha Liberty is still in touch with all her family, and they know,
Okay.
and then it's Lucio is, sort of far removed, because that's kind of what they
Darn,
get to
okay.
at some point, is that some wizards sort of stay within the family in generation after generation after. They know they have
know.
a 400-year-old Auntie Martha, right? Whereas, in Lucio's family or whatever, it was you just kind of eventually grow
apart.
up and move on, and she's got well, I don't think she ever had children of her own, so not grandchildren, but she's got, nieces and whatever, ancestors.
15 generations down the line or whatever.
I have no idea who she is, or that she's still alive, or that she's, connected to them, kind of a thing.
It might be
That
Martha
was-
Liberty.
That was
I
Martha
thought it was
Liberty.
Ancient
That was,
Mai.
yeah, sorry, no.
I was gonna say, because I could see then in Ancient Mai's case where, the very first generation was ancient grandma, and now 400 years later, they're still ancient grandma.
Yeah, no, that's pretty sure Martha Liberty. So anyways,
Okay.
So we're left with the most anticipated answer from the last council member. An extremely thin and tall man of 7 feet, the gatekeeper.
Taller than even Harry.
not as thin as Lafortier, though.
And yeah, sorry, when Harry turns to this guy, he's like, this whole time I've been so distracted, I barely even noticed this other 7-foot figure on the stage.
I know.
You're a detective.
I'm granted, he was at the end of the stage. I'm I don't know, are you standing right under, is this an actual theater stage with the curtains pulled back at the edges or
It's an
something?
auditorium.
But yeah, I feel again, when you've got Ebenezer's not outrageously tall. He's under 6 feet tall. Listen's twin is under 6 feet tall. Ancient Mai is a tiny old lady, so she's, possibly under 5 feet tall, not under 6 foot, and exactly right. Harry's always making such a big deal that how at 6'8", 6'9", he's this NBA sized guy that, people, and I'm you don't notice the other guy that's actually taller than you?
Was he
literally-
sitting down and then stood up and was
No,
He's
they're
on the stage.
They're all standing at these podiums on the
Oh, okay,
stage,
okay.
right? So exactly. And
you're a detective, even if he was sitting down on the stage.
And this is what I was saying to Jess on the way here too, because we're about to get to it in a couple more pages. I believe it is still within this chapter.
Still in this chapter.
But the ancient Mai's guy gets brought in, and they're like, "Oh, these people like drove by and dumped him out of a car." And Harry's like, "Did you get the license plate?" And I'm like,
detective.
I was like, so these guys that are the Wardens, like, didn't get the license plate of the car that unexpectedly drove by and dumped something. Like, this is, they're at this meeting, they're not expecting this shit to happen or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, you're all pissed off because they didn't get the license plate of a speeding car. I'm like, you literally have been in this room for like 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour, however long this point of the conversation, and you didn't notice the giant man standing at the end of the stage. I'm like, just how, like, blended in are these cloaks that they It's like they're really like
watching.
Yeah, it's like they're really camouflaging. It's like it makes you look really slimming or really apparently you put these wizard cloaks on and you just like disappear. Essentially, you all just blend into the background.
You just look horribly average.
Apparently.
Hey, no attention to the 7-foot tall man behind the curtain.
Been sitting quietly, standing next to like at the end of, because I always picture him at the end of like, because it's always like, so you say the Merlin's in the middle, and then like Lefortier is like next to him or whatever, and then so I have like Ancient Mai's on that side, and then you've got like Martha and Ebenezer and Injun Joe, and then they're like, he was at the far left of the stage too, so you're like always picture that like he's on their side of it, right? You've literally got Mai and Lefortier and the Merlin are all their side, and then everybody else. So it was like he's even on the side of like the people that you're like allied with and are like paying the most attention, that are like fighting. I'm like, you're looking at Injun Joe and you don't like little Injun Joe that again is like 5.5 feet tall. You don't notice the 7-foot giant standing beside him while he makes this
I can't
point.
see past that. Who's there?
Like, I don't know. He's like.
Anyways, I love the gatekeeper's response. Like, it's so mystic and just priceless. It rained toads this morning. A baffled silence followed. It became, a moment later, a baffled mutter. Gatekeeper, the Merlin said, his voice more urgent. How do you vote? With deliberation.
Yes, that is a fantastic line. And I do love the way Marsters reads this, too, because he does it, and they're like, Gatekeeper, what say you? Or how do you vote? And he's like, oh yeah, what say you? And he's like, it rained toads today. Like, it's just the way Marcher does. He does, like, this lows, like, just like this, like, okay.
Old man speaks nonsense. More at 11.
But I do love how, like, even the Merlin and everybody are like, I mean, this is such a very, like, wizardy thing to say. Like Harry's talked about, playing up to the expectations before of, like, steepling his fingers in, like, a wizardly fashion for, like, Monica Sells, or, like, putting on the robe or wearing the hat or something.
Smelling Susan's perfume.
They just expect you to be, but it's like, this isn't even, the Merlin is like, what the fuck?
Which, to be fair to everyone else, most of us, when we go to a conference, you've got to get there the night before, check into the hotel, drive in the morning. You might have seen the toads. Wizards, though, who can step through the Never Never, they all just got here right now for this. They didn't need to be here this morning, right? So a lot of them probably did miss the raining toads.
Yes. But I know, it's not just about they're all, but I'm like, this is also such a wizardy thing to say. You would think maybe this would have some import. Like, you think maybe the Merlin, all people would be like, oh shit, really? Oh damn, did you guys know? Fuck yeah, how come that matters? You know what I mean? They're like, but everybody is just like, what? Okay.
Old man speaks.
Old man speaks or whatever. And he's not even that old. So yeah, they're like,
he's not even that old. What do you mean he's not even that old? We're dealing with 400-year-old people right now.
Oh, yeah, okay, but I meant, like, I don't think the gatekeeper necessarily in comparison to the other people on the council.
Oh.
Right? It's not like he's 1,000 and they're, like, 400 or whatever.
I take him to be one of the oldest.
Or at least one of the vaguest.
Definitely one of the vaguest.
But, I'd say, like, the Merlin, Ancient Mai, and the Gatekeeper would be, like, the 3 oldest.
I think, okay, but Ebenezer's turned it down a whole bunch. So he could have been on there a lot.
He can also be old, but still. They're all really old.
Okay, most of them, yes, granted, to get on, because, again, it takes 400 years for them to die. Positions don't open up very fast. I get it.
So you mentioned something about he wants to hear what the word return with the messenger, what the messenger has to say, sorry.
Yeah.
Which is also, again, like, what?
Yes, so I will not cast my vote until a messenger speaks, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, all right, old man.
And then the meeting's conveniently interrupted by a pair of wardens with some...
Wardens dragging in some bitch.
Yeah.
Messenger, I mean.
to the absent courier to the Winter Queen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like,
so
that's some amazing timing to what.
This is the other thing I was saying to Jess, right? So again, no offense, Tansenn, you probably don't really remember a lot about the gatekeeper or the role he's played.
Not at all.
Okay, so those of you that do will know. So I'm just like, is this part of his duties, powers, whatever, that he sort of has this sense of what's going on? I'm like, or is he just like a little bit like psychic and like prescient or whatever? Like, we do meet sort of a smaller character later on, that is, as Harry sort of commonly refers to them as the have-nots, because I think we were talking a little bit about this in this meeting. It's come up too that anybody with the slightest hint of power is being like snatched off. The vampires are just going after anybody that could even vaguely be considered magical or wizard-like, right? So it's like we do meet some people that have these very, like Lydia had, one small talent or whatever, right? And things like that. So yeah, we meet somebody that she's psychic within like a second or two, so she can't tell the future. But like as you're introducing yourself, you'll be like, "Hi," and I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you, Tan." Before you actually finish the sentence, So I'm like, I just wonder. I was like, is he just? This is the difference where he's like a more fully evolved, wizard. I'm like, is he just like psychic that he knows, or I'm like, is this part of his job and the things he's been dealing with, and he's got extra tools and tricks that make him a little bit know what's going on?
I mean, I did wonder that when I read it. It was like, oh.
Because I was like, yeah, there's obviously something. Like, it's not just...
something.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just pure coincidence, But I was like, I just don't know whether that's part of his own natural talent or part of his, like,
the job
resume
gave it to him,
or something. Yeah, exactly. Because you will learn later on that he's got different...
Like in D&D, where you've got race abilities and class abilities,
Yeah, exactly. So, yes,
or basically your self abilities or your job abilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But anyway, so yes, conveniently, all of a sudden, boom, what messenger? What are you talking about?
I like the gatekeeper also.
Messenger.
The gatekeeper's standing behind a curtain too, and he's just like, okay, if they keep arguing for 11 more minutes, this guy's gonna show up right on time. For 7 more minutes, this guy's gonna show up right on time. They keep arguing for 3 more minutes. Nice, my time.
He already knows how long they're gonna argue for.
So I've got to say something really vague.
One vague sentence
minute.
just to delay this for 1 minute.
Like, I love my job.
Total wizard.
Rain toes. What?
And in his head, he's like, 45, 44, 43, yep. Nice. So, yes, Ancient Mai, this is my messenger. I sent him to the winter. You might have heard me 10 minutes say that he never returned. This is his return. What information do you have, messenger?
Yeah.
What did you learn from winter?
But he's not looking good either.
Yeah, he's fucked up. Winter fucked him up.
Yeah, big time.
Yep.
Just apparently because
they can
do that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, found out he got chucked out of a car and dumped, and they were going to take him right away for help, and he freaked out, so they brought him into Mai first. And I guess it's a good thing they did. So
yes.
She talks to him in presumably Mandarin or something, or is it just Chinese? Whatever, anyways. Mai has a conversation with him in that and then translates for everybody else. So Queen Mab bade him tell the council she will permit them travel through her realm, provided one request is fulfilled. And we learned last chapter already when she introduced said that Titania was just like, dude, I'm out. I'm not taking sides. I'm not getting involved. I'm not granting you permission through my lands, right? So they're like, so they have no choice now. This is their last bet that they were. This is all their right. So they need Mab's permission because again, like you say, it's the easiest way for them to travel. Without blowing everything up and killing them and all the people around them. Thanks, wizards. So, yeah. So then they're like, okay, well, fine. Like, what's the request? And she's like, he says we already know. She's like, Mab already talked to someone, and that someone knows, but we don't know who that someone is or what the request
Somebody
is.
on the council.
Yeah.
Dresden's like, oh, shit.
Yeah, and so they all immediately pull off to converse, the senior council or whatever, right? And I just love this. Like, Harry just turns back around to his table and just thump, thump, thump. He just like bangs it on the table. And it's like, oh.
Damn it.
Fuck
Damn it.
my
Damn it.
life.
When it rains, it pours.
Toads.
And apparently it pours toads.
Yeah. Even better is the gatekeeper abandoning the senior council just to come ominously stand at Harry's shoulder. 7 feet up in the sky. Harry, like, slumped over the table.
In his bathroom.
Yeah, his bathroom. Like, hey, buddy, something to share with the class?
It's like, wait, everybody else is discussing this, and you're just bashing your head into the table.
Weird.
I feel like you know something we don't. Yeah. So, he's like, so you know about this whole Rain of Toads things, hey? And, he's like, yeah, means trouble. He's like, you can just tell, it's like the cowl to his hood is still up. And he's like, I can still tell he's just, like, half laughing at me. Like, there's just a smile, and he's like, trouble, huh? You don't say. So, so he's like, so they have a nice little exchange there.
Will you answer me one question honestly, Dresden?
He's like, and then I love how Dresden's kind of like, I don't know what the fuck this is, I don't really want to, but at the same time he's like, but you know what, you're holding my balls in your hand right now, you're the last one left to vote, and this literally, so you know what, I'm sure, what's the question? I will do my best to answer it. And, he's like,
chosen an emissary.
That's Maeve later that asks about his emissions, okay? It's not Mav.
But
Yes, has Mav chosen an emissary? And he's like, I really struggled not to let anything show, but apparently I suck at that because he was instantly like, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, Dresden really realizes the full impact of Mab's plan for him, and so he does admit to the gatekeeper Mab's intentions. He's just like, okay.
Set you right up for the start. No wonder she was so positive that I'd take the case, is because she knew she'd set it up, so I had to. As usual, as always, as anything and everything to do with fairies. And I love how he'll, like, go out and warn people. You know, he's like, Susan, don't look at her, don't talk to her, don't give her your name. But you will constantly keep stepping in it with that. I'm like, I understand it's you know, after that first time, it's really hard to get back out again, Harry. But it's like, you know better, and you keep hoping, well, maybe this time I've done it. Like, I closed off all these loopholes with Mab. Maybe, nope, I wasn't counting on that. Nope, okay.
The gatekeeper breaks it down for Dresden why Mab might want a human emissary, and finally explains it's all about balance. And then he awkwardly asks what the date is. June 18th is the reply. Kind of random.
Yeah.
Like, oh. Any insight to the significance of the date?
Solstice.
June 21st.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's why I asked these questions.
Okay.
Give it another page or two and it'll tell you.
Yeah.
We're not that
Actually, I think
smart.
it takes a little while yet to come up with, but yes, it doesn't really explain. But yeah, I was going to say that's the only thing I know about the end of June is that's
Summer
when
solstice is coming.
That is when, yeah.
Yeah, so also they're having this whole conversation and they're listening, so they're speaking extra quiet so that only Harry's table can't hear him, the senior council. Like, they're both like way under the breath and just
Which I thought was a nice touch, because Harry's brought it up since book one that he can listen. We never really see or encounter anybody else, because he even says, he's like, I don't even know if it's really all that magical, or just kind of like
something I can
really
do.
extra pay attention sort of a thing when I can block everything else. But yeah, he's like, I understand you can listen. Let's just our little private cone of silence. That actually works, unlike the cone of silence. So, so they have their little back and forth, and Gatekeeper just gives them this whole other perspective, you know, he's like, well, we're meddling in her problems, he's like, or he's like, Mab's meddling in our affairs, and he's like, maybe we're meddling in hers. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
Can I just go home?
Yeah, seriously. Oh, well, this is one of those conversations that it's like, it will all be revealed at the end, and it's like, oh, fine. Who cares
like,
then?
just literally, you could give me something
Catch
right
me
now,
in 300
like,
pages then, fine.
Exactly. So then he's like, you're saying I should work for Mab? And so he kind of is like,
well, actually, real quick, is that the gatekeeper is like, listen, like, I can't save you from your fate, but I can give you a chance to save yourself from it, right?
Yeah.
Just to say that to Harry every book from now on. Just come back and repeat that to him from now until the end of time. Like, it seems really wasted to have used it here, quite frankly. Like, do you know what's coming? Although, to be fair, I guess Mab is at the top of it all. But still, like, do you know what's coming? Like, now it seems a little early to be giving this particular speech.
Well, it's all relevant. Like, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, you know. It
just would have been nice if he's like, don't forget this. You're going to need to remember it every 6 months for the rest of your life. You know?
That's like everything that has happened to Harry.
Yeah,
don't forget Victor Self, because apparently he's going to come back in 25 years and be important. But, So anyways,
Your life sucks. Da, 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 da.
yes, that's just what the title of all the books should be. Harry, your life
This
sucks.
guy life
Volume
sucks.
1. So anyway,
And it gets worse.
sucky or suckiest.
Your life sucks, and that's just the start.
We're starting from bad and going downhill.
I was gonna say the book's could have started as adoption then. when your mother died, how about?
Okay. So yeah, so they finally finished their little powwow up on stage because now the Merlin's getting back to business. He's like, "Hey, gatekeeper, we still don't have an answer for you. Like, what the fuck? Like, can we vote this guy out and get on with our lives?
Forget about that shit, real quick.
We don't even need to figure out what map shit is.
Yeah,
We're just gonna turn Harry over and it won't fucking matter, okay?
Why are we wasting time on this, bitch?
Why are we wasting time on this?" So weirdly, he decides to say, well, let's let Dresden figure it out then. That'll prove. If he can figure out what Mab wants and what this mysterious request is, then that'll show that he's loyal to us. It'll show that he's willing to put himself ahead of the group because this is not going to be an easy thing. You know, he's kind of screwed if he does, screwed if he doesn't. So if he's willing to play ball, and then he's like, and if he, you know, and then yeah, that's when Ebenezer's like, well, what if he can't? Like, you want the youngest wizard to go out there? And he's like, well, maybe then your affection or whatever is misplaced. Maybe he's not such hot shit after all. If he goes and gets himself killed, well, you know, maybe he didn't deserve to be a full-time wizard, and now he's dead, and hopefully the vampires will leave us alone anyway. So, you know, one way or the other, one side's gonna come out, right? So yeah, Ebenezer's not real impressed about
No,
that.
he's like, what? It's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Like, why would you just kill him now?
Exactly, right? He's like, how is he, and this is where, you know, the youngest guy's like, how is he possibly supposed to figure out what the hell Mab of all and not just of all people. I'm like, she ain't a people, and she's like the head, not people. You know? It's like the fucking queen of winter. This jackass is supposed to figure it out. Like,
One of the queens of fairy.
it's like, y'all are debating whether he, like, can be a wizard. And I'm like, you want to throw him into, like, mega, right?
And really, Ebenezer's like, I said not kill him.
He's like, that's kind of what I'm trying to not throw him
I
to
know
the
it seems
wolves.
like we're on like just two sides of the same coin, but my coin is actually a lot smaller than this. I just don't want to kill him.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, so Dresden admits to turning Mab down earlier that day, and he realizes his choices are really like his fate is between the vampires or the fairies. Like he's rocking a hard place. Like there's no
time.
winning for him,
Damn
really.
Be damned if you don't. Exactly. And I love this. I was kind of like, Ebenezer. Like, how is she supposed to figure out? How do we let her? And then he's like, wait, what? He's like, okay, yeah. So I do, but I just I love. And he's like, she did come. She did ask. I told her no. And they're like. Now it's Ebenezer's. Now it's Ebenezer's turn to pound his head against the.
To be fair, the Red Court came and asked, and he said yes, and they're all pissed about that. But now he's supposed to be saying yes to Mab. They just said like, don't get involved if you don't want to be involved, bitch. And he's like, all right, I don't be involved. And they're like, motherfucker, you go be involved right the fuck now.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Well, she did say
You know what?
there was
A war
thing.
with red. Let's also go to war with winter.
Yeah, all right. No problem. So we get a hell's bells on Ebenezer. He's like, oh, fuck my life. Goddamn kids. I'm so fucking done.
You know what? I hope you do die.
It's like, what was he saying? They met up in the parking lot. He's like, well, the last time I missed one of these, they stuck me with this dumbass apprentice. So now I don't dare miss one, you know? And he's like, fuck Harry.
Ebenezer, I'd actually like to vote the other way.
You know what? Is there take backs? I would like a moment to reconsider.
Yeah, so with the gatekeeper's influence, Dresden accepts working with Mab.
Yeah, because it's the lesser of the it's either possible death or instant death. You know, so he's like, well, let's just delay the inevitable and let's try and avoid it just in case.
I've worked my way out of bargains with Faye before. I can do
how
it
much
again.
worse can Mab be than Leah?
Surely she'll ask me to pass her the salt at least once.
At least once, and boom, just like that,
Done.
I fulfilled my obligations. So, yeah, so that's basically it. So, basically he says that as deals went, it blew. It's like, I can either, if I didn't play with the fairies and come out on top, the council would serve me up to the vampires. And the former might get me really, really killed, and the latter would probably certainly kill me as well. Or, the latter would certainly kill me as well, and probably more than that. So, yeah, but, like he says, it's like, well, it's the only way, it's the only game in town right now, so... Justin says, yep, I will do it.
This concludes our episode 9.5, The Swing Vote. Thank you for listening. You can find us online at freeflowrambling.com and McAnally's.ca. There we have links to our other podcasts, social media, and other fun tidbits. Please subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and please consider supporting us through Patreon to keep the magic alive, to see more content. We are Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.